I realized from what you had been telling me from the beginning when I was sitting the exam, I was actually recalling you telling me like, Mike, you're going to be over prepared for this exam, because I was looking at them, some of these questions. I'm like, this is going to be a trick because it seems too
Too,
simple.
too
There's
easy, yeah.
nothing else, right? But it boiled down to fundamentals, and it's all
Right.
about capturing fundamentals, and they want to test your ability to have fundamentals. It's not that they're trying to set traps for you to fail, like how I thought, this exam was. So I got a very good positive vibe about the whole thing and how the exam is, but you have to prepare. You
Yeah,
have to
you have to
prepare.
prepare and better over prepared. To be honest, for
Yeah.
PE, it's the final thing. Hi, Mike.
I was him.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Very happy.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah.
Congratulations on passing your PE Power exam in the first attempt with me. I know it was your repeat attempt, and we're going to go through that. But to those of you who are watching this interview, I just want to let you know that Mike is one of my very first students. So I published my very first book in 2015, and then I launched my FE electrical course in 2016. It was somewhere around in January of 2016, if I remember correctly. And then I know that Mike was one of the first students who enrolled somewhere in 2016, February or March, somewhere around that timeline.
In the year. Yep.
And then Mike used my exam preparation resources back in 2016. We are in 2022 right now. For my electrical course, he used my study guide and the practice exams, and passed it in the first attempt with me. So I remembered Mike's very first email. I was actually out of the country, and I got a message. And back in those days, Mike, I'll be honest, like whenever I would get an email from a student saying that I passed the FE exam, it would make me so happy, right? Because the volume of students was very low, and the number of students I had helped was very low at that point in time. And most of the students were just aware of my study guide or some of my practice exams. So for a student like you to take the initiative and reach out to me and then let me know that the product works and it helps you achieve your goal, it was very, very delightful.
Good.
And then between 2016, yeah. So take me from there. Actually, let's go back to why you started your FE exam preparation.
Sure. Yeah. So, and thank you. That was a good intro. Obviously, I consider myself a career student because I have basically been, in college. I think I want to say most of my adult life, which I like it. I enjoy it. But coming back to graduation, I graduated back in 2008. So to me, that's like ages ago. And so between then and when I was trying to prepare for my, FE, that was a good 8 years in between. But, when I started getting ready for the FE, there were not very many resources out there that to me were very clear on, what kind of content or direction I would take once I get those resources in place. So when I came across your resources, I was like, you know what, this looks interesting because the videos were very, I kind of have a short attention span. So the videos were short enough and they captured the content. Yeah. And then I was able to go through the short lectures because, as you know, FE is very broad. So it was like a lot of stuff that I had to remember from like 8 years ago and all that stuff. So I was happy that, I was able to use that resource and pass on my attempt at that point, but also more than anything, being able to have that live interaction because most of the resources I'd found were probably just books and then they would kind of be all over the place, so to speak.
Right.
So after
sorry to interrupt you. It's funny you mentioned that my initial videos back in 2016 for FE were short. They were indeed short. I think that the average length of the lectures was about 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. Yeah. And then the evolution sort of took a very different trajectory. My videos actually ended up becoming 20 plus 30 minutes long in some cases. And then students were like, Wasim, we're losing interest. Wasim, I'm actually not able to follow. Like the attention span is so limited. Then
Mhm.
I basically took a step back and went back to the original. My videos on average, still the FE are not 5 to 7 minutes. They are 10 to 15 minutes, but I think that's a sweet spot. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that helps because you're able to just focus and get onto the content, and then you go and do your own practice, as opposed to like having like, you know, a lot of like content and details and all that stuff at one time. Then it's easy to get lost. For some of us, I think for most
Right.
students, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah. So so after that, obviously one of the things that I have a job, I have a family and all that stuff, just very typical for most, I'm sure most students who are on this path.
Mm-hmm.
So those challenges also start factoring in because I would think back and say, you know what, this would have been perfect if it was like right out of college, just
Yeah,
sit there
I know.
and then
I
just get
know.
it done and then sit the P and get it
Yeah.
done. But my state of Pennsylvania requires that you have like 5 years experience before you can sit
Right.
your PE. But I remember when I would send you emails right after my FE, I would, start talking to you about that and asking you about like, hey, I would like to see the PE now because I don't
Yes.
want to wait for 5 years. I have so
Yes.
many obligations and things will catch up. I don't think I'll be able to do the PE.
That was in 2016. You were asking me. I
Back
remember.
in
Yeah.
16 years. And then I remember it's when you gave me some advice and said, hey, you know what, if you check out some other states, I think Texas was one of them you had mentioned, they actually decoupled the exam.
Yeah.
And so you can actually sit it before you have those 5-year experience, so to speak, and then you can come back and have reciprocate with your state and at that point, but at least you've done the exam and it's out of the way. So
Yeah.
that's when I went ahead and said, you know what, I'll register and do the PE in Texas. So I went through the whole process of registering for that. I don't think at that time you had your PE
No.
out yet. Right?
No, I didn't. In 2016, I didn't. I remember that you asked me and I told you that eventually I'll get to it. Right. And it's
Yeah.
26 years later, I did get to it. Like 5 years later, the course was actually launched last year, essentially in its.
Yeah. So at that time, I was like, oh,
Yes.
by the time you get to it, I'll be done with my PE. So see you. So I did go ahead and just registered for the PE. Now this was like a year after the FE, so I was very fresh from the FE, obviously. But again, let's keep in mind that 8 years removed from college.
Yeah.
I'm just in the workspace.
Yeah.
So
your first attempt was in 2017?
2017 was my first attempt. Yes.
Okay. And honestly, like only 20 to 30% of FE electrical, in my opinion, carries over to PE because PE power is a completely different ballgame, and we'll discuss that.
Yes.
So your first attempt was in 2017. How did you prepare for that?
So, like I said, you didn't have the resource out there, and honestly, being perfectly honest, I didn't do a lot of preparation because I was still coming off of the high of passing FE.
Yes.
And just having that mindset that, oh, it's an engineering exam, I kind of passed it and I have some engineering understanding on most of these subjects. I looked at the NCES schedule
specification.
yeah, and I said, oh no, I can. So I basically, like, for most part, I just winged it. I didn't go into too much in depth in terms of preparation.
Right.
I just kind of was relying on the fact that one, if I pass the the FE, sorry, and two, just having a good background knowledge on like basics of electricity, Ohm's law, all that stuff, I'll be able to walk in there and knock out 80 questions and give myself a good chance. I had something else coming.
So that's called the curse of confidence, right? Or overconfidence, I should say.
This was my first attempt. I was the most confident. I knew that I was gonna pass this exam.
Yeah.
So I went in, and this was down in Texas. So I live in Pennsylvania, so I had to prepare and fly down there. Now this was not the CBT format.
Yes, this was the open book.
Open book.
Yeah.
So I brought a whole library, maybe 2 suitcases worth of books.
Yes.
And went down to Austin, and then I sat the exam.
Yeah. And it obviously was not a successful attempt, right? So,
no.
Yeah. So
very sobering and very humbling.
Right.
Yeah.
So you did 2 open book attempts, correct?
Yes.
So when was your second one?
So my second one was also in Texas. So I took about another year and a half after my first attempt and unsuccessful attempt. I decided to, you know, I looked at it, I started seeing it like for what it is. It's not an easy exam.
Right. Yeah, you
It's
realize that. Yes.
it's got a lot of depth. It's not just it's not broad and super. No one says superficial. I feel it was also kind of tough, but it was more broad and more
Yeah.
superficial. The PE
Yeah.
is more depth,
Very much in depth.
very much in depth, and very key on like core concepts. So once I saw that, I said, okay, at least I'm happy that I got to see the exam. I saw what the timing is for it. I realized that there were a lot of areas that I just didn't have a clue, like things like the NEC code, you know, stuff like that, because I don't work in the power industry. I work in automation, and so in industrial automation, we hardly use you know, code references.
Code, yeah. You're not building anything new, essentially.
Exactly, yeah. There's not, you know, it's a lot of like just low voltage systems and things of that nature. So I saw the areas that I really needed to like show up. And also after your first, when you do the pass fail, when you do the fail, when you get the fail, they'll always give you like a breakdown of
diagnostics.
And then if you pass, they kick you out. They don't care about you anymore.
Yeah. No, Texas used to give, or was it from NCES? I don't remember exactly, but I took my PE power for Texas as well. So they actually report the raw score as well. I remember what my raw score was, right? So, okay, so 2018 comes around, and then this time you're more serious, you're more committed, and you're more aware of what it entails. So how did you prepare for this attempt? What did you do differently?
So the second time around, I signed up for a resource that, you know, mentioned the name, but I did sign up for another resource to prepare for the exam.
An online course?
Huh?
An online course. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And just kind of went through the same iterations, you know, now studying a little bit deeper, getting to understand the concepts a little bit more. But I don't think I was, you know, the online course that I got was fairly good, but it wasn't. I don't think it covered a lot of the areas that I think still I had a lacking in. So, I mean, I went back a year later. I felt like a little better, but not as confident as I was the first time around, because I was now so to the realities of this exam.
Yes.
But I think one of the things that you know, and that will come in, you know, we'll talk about that when I talk about the third attempt that I was successful in.
Yeah.
But the second attempt, I got a little deeper with concepts. I got to understand a little more of the concepts, but also like I needed to cover more areas than what I had covered the first time around, even though I'm not working in the industry and I don't have that experience.
Right.
So that's the approach I took. So I did a little better on the second approach because I got the diagnostics, but I also saw that there were still areas that were, you know, lagging behind pretty severely.
Okay. So we're in 2018 right now because I want to move forward. So we're in 2018. So what happened between 2018 and 2022? Well, 2020 was a write-off, right?
Yes.
But then what were you doing in 2019 and 2021?
Well, so I started looking for, you know, what resource can I get really to nail this down? Because now it wasn't a question of not knowing what the exam content is. I knew what the content is because I had taken it twice.
Yeah.
But it was a question of, one, I needed a resource that can really target me to the exam.
Yeah.
And then number two, not just now the content, but also the technique. Like, is there something that I'm missing here, you know, between the content and technique that I can combine those two and give it that third try and be successful.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 2020, were you still actively studying for the exam in 2019 and 2020, or had you put it on the back burner?
Well, 2020 with all the COVID stuff and all that stuff, I kind of started focusing more on my work now.
Right.
A little bit discouraged because I said, wow, now this is the second time around. And again, you know, I'm not in the industry, not to make that an excuse, but I saw the content already and I said, you know, I should be able to do this stuff.
Yeah.
But there's just a few key pieces that I felt were still missing for me to get over the hump.
Right. So I developed my course in 2021, put a lot of time and effort in it actually during the course of 2020. But by 2021, my course was actually in a pretty good shape. And I reached out to you and I told you that, hey, Mike, you know what? My course is ready. And then I would love to have you in the course. Okay. And then you said, okay, you have already tried a few other resources, one course and a bunch of books. I think you probably got every single book that was
Oh,
on
I have
Amazon for P
already.
Power, right?
Yeah,
But when you mentioned
full
me the
library.
names,
I
I'm
don't know
like,
what
I'm like, did you even leave out a single book, which I don't think you had, right? So
Yep.
2020, so you enrolled into my course in 2021, but I think you were still giving the other course a shot, and you said, Wasim, I'm gonna really dive into it in September. I remember September or October of 2021, right? And then I told you that I have my study guide for. Do you have the study guide on you? The P Power study guide, the second
Yes, I
edition?
have it right there on
Yeah,
my.
yeah. So this book, I told you
The blue
that
one.
this, yeah, I told you that
Yep.
the second edition of my study guide for P Power is also in works, and then hopefully anytime now I'll have it ready. So it was really January 7th then when I launched this on 2022. And the other thing I did in 2022 was the live training component added to my course, right? So all of these resources were sort of coming together. And I also, I mean, to every single student of mine who enrolls in my PE Power program, or for that reason, even in the FE Electrical, and you can probably comment on that, is that I almost make it a personal mission to sort of provide that one-on-one guidance to my students, right? So I don't know how many multiple Zoom calls we had, tons of email exchanges that we had. So I could clearly see, and from my standpoint as an instructor who's worked with tons of students, I could clearly see your strengths. And your strengths, I pointed that out, was that you were really deep into concepts, very good, right? And you were making sure that you understood every piece of the puzzle. And just fast tracking to the time when you took my computer simulated practice exam, which is part of the course, the demon that we saw was essentially the timing, right? So you had done a lot of hard work, attending, live training classes, going through my entire course, going through some other courses, tons of books. So I realized that, okay, we need to work on timing. So would you comment on that as to how you were able to patch that up, and what was your
Yes,
approach?
absolutely, and that was the key there because I remember actually when you were giving me advice on one of our many interactions, and you said, Mike, you're gonna end up being about prepared, which is not a bad thing,
Yeah.
but you're starting to spin your wheels because you're trying to get too deep in the concept work, and I can see your strengths on the concept, which to me was important because I was able to see that you actually have that one-on-one focus with what I'm trying to do. I know you have a lot of students, so to me that meant something. It was very encouraging that I was able to get that feedback, but it wasn't just once. I know I would send you, God, so many emails in the day, in the night with like different questions, screenshots, all that stuff, and you're always kind enough to take your time and respond back and also ask for my input because it kind of also would allow me to think on these concepts, not so much like get the answer from you, but you'd kind of tell me, okay, how about this way, or what do you think about this and that. So getting too deep in the concepts, I would have probably continued on that journey if you didn't give me that piece of advice to say, hey, number one, you're good with concepts, trust me, because I wasn't trusting myself. Remember, I had already failed twice. So now I was thinking the only way to pass is to get more concepts, to pile on the concepts, right?
Yeah.
So number one, that was the first thing. Like when you say, no, the concepts, you're good on the concepts from the questions you're asking me.
Yeah.
You're good with the concepts, I think. But the second thing was when I did the computer simulated exam towards, I think the last month before my scheduled exam.
I think it was less than a month. It was probably 2 to 3 weeks before the exam. Yeah. Yeah.
At that point, I was feeling again that confidence coming back because I was like, oh, the concepts I'm good. I can do the quizzes and pass the quizzes. Let me sit the exam and see how it goes. But again, I didn't sit the exam the way you had prescribed, which I should have, just as a straight up 8-hour session.
Yeah.
But I did it in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then I did it the next day in 4 hours.
Yeah.
So
and this computer simulation. And this computer simulated practice exam is part of the course. So my online PE Power course, which also includes a live training component, you will get to do that computer simulated practice exam. And I encourage students to do the computer simulated practice exam after completing the course, and then review their exam performance live on a Zoom call. And that's where we spotted that there were questions, bunch of questions, generally cluttered in the first half of the exam, where you were spending 10, 15, 12 minutes, right? And when you reach the end of the section, you were barely spending like few seconds. So
Exactly.
that was, and it's not that the questions at the end were not doable, it's just that you were not setting up yourself for success, right?
Yes.
And then when we saw that, both of us, when we reviewed that, I was like, Mike, you need to go back and maybe just, pick up my book, okay? And time yourself with how many questions you're able to do in 30 minutes, divide the number of questions by 30 minutes, and you get questions per minute or time per minute, right? However way you want to look at it. And I think that's where, and I had to pull you back. I literally had to pull you back from going deeper into concepts, right?
Yes.
Which generally
Yes.
speaking is the other way around, because students,
Yeah.
most of the students, FE students, are in the same state of mind when you were in your first attempt. They're like, okay, I got the FE done, the PE is going to be similar, just skim through the surface, no need to understand the concepts and plug and play, but it doesn't work out. So I'm glad that that worked out for you, Mike. And eventually, 6 years from the day you started your journey, or the year you started your journey in 2016, right? Then we made it happen, the whole 9 yards, right? Full circle in 2022, with you getting done with your PE Power exam and then becoming a licensed professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania. So congratulations. Any advice, or why would you recommend students to consider the PE Power course, Mike?
Well, several reasons, but one main reason is that I think of all the resources, and again, I did this over a period of 4 or 5 years with multiple different resources. I think of all the resources, yours has the most breadth of subject areas that honestly I found on the exam. Also, I like that the structure of your coursework follows very closely what the NCES course outline is for that exam. So that makes things kind of modular, where you can say, okay, this is the subject area. And then I would actually chart my performance on each subject area based on that. And I would say, okay, I'm good, medium, still struggling in this area, assign this. I think also your computer simulated exam, to me, was the biggest revelation as well. The coursework was a key of bringing all the concepts and all the materials together. But to me, the simulated exam, I think so much value there that I can't overstate, because it revealed a lot to me. Again, I had
about your timing, especially in your case, because
timing, technique, and just exam environment, state of mind, all those things. So I think it's important. I would recommend that, maybe don't do it as late as I did it, maybe 2-3 weeks exam. I would say take it like a couple months prior, gauge where you stand. And you can take it a couple times. There's nothing wrong with doing it multiple times. But I think the first time around is very important because it revealed a lot for me. So just to summarize, the coursework, the breadth of it, and also the depth was very key for me. The simulated exam was, to me, that was the golden ticket. And then just our interaction as well, that you availability, the support, the one-on-one support. Now, I want to say something about the live classes. I mean, I was one of your first classes too for the live sessions, right?
Yeah.
I thought those were very helpful as well. I think just the aspect of being able to interact and hear other students' point of view and questions and things of that nature, they kind of make you think a little differently. But where I got most of the value from those is going back into the archives and
the recordings,
recordings, and going through the content again and doing it. So I think you've captured like a whole host of resources at a very good cost. I'm saying that because I take other classes.
Yeah, I don't want you to mention the cost. The cost, I always want to keep it affordable, right? Because maybe 2 years from now, if somebody is watching this and they're like, hey, why did the cost go up? So
Yeah,
I will always try my level best to make it as affordable to the students as possible. But yeah, thanks a lot for your feedback, Mike. It was a pleasure helping you through the entire process, and I look forward to staying in touch with you. And I am 100% confident that the amount of effort that you've put in over the course of like 6+ years is really going to pay dividend in your future career growth, and opportunities that it's going to bring for you is just going to be amazing, right? It's probably going to be the best thing that you've done for your career.
Yeah, I'm excited. It was not easy. It was tough, but I also saw other students on these same interviews, and they would talk about the sacrifices they've had to make. One of your students, I recall, saying, sometimes you studied until 2 a.m. And I said, you know what? Just make that sacrifice. It's one and done. I don't work in the industry again, which to me, I felt like it was a little bit of a disadvantage, but it became an advantage to me because I was looking at things with very fresh eyes.
Right. Exactly.
But at the end of the day, when it came to the exam, I realized from what you had been telling me from the beginning, when I was sitting the exam, I was actually recalling you telling me like, Mike, you're going to be over prepared for this exam, because I was looking at some of these questions. I'm like, this is going to be a trick because it seems too simple.
Too easy. Yeah.
Nothing else, right? But it boiled down to fundamentals, and it's all about capturing fundamentals, and they want to test your ability to have fundamentals. It's not that they're trying to set traps for you to fail, like how I thought, this exam was. So I got a very good positive vibe about the whole thing and how the exam is, but you have to prepare. You have to
prepare, and better over prepare. To be honest, for PE, it's the final thing. Give it your best shot, and it might even be the final exam that you're ever going to take in your career of this caliber, right? So just give it everything. So once again, thanks a lot for your time, Mike. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to staying in touch with you. And best of luck for your future career.
Thank you again for your help, Austin. Thank you.
Thank you.